Kev fact, what's going to happen to Arnie Roth? Arnie Roth is a character that was introduced in the early 80s by Jan de Mateus, and Mike Zeck was the artist on that. And he is the childhood best friend of Steve Rogers. When he was first introduced, it was a cool dynamic because Arnie was, middle aged, probably 40s or 50s, and Steve was still a young guy in his mid 20s or early 30s. Arnie was the guy who always stood up for Steve when Steve was getting beat up as a skinny young kid. And this is probably what influenced the MCU's version of Bucky Barnes, where some of Arnie's characteristics got rolled into Bucky's. Something also important about Arnie is that he was gay. It wasn't confirmed in the 80s because, they couldn't say that in a comic book at the time. It's later been confirmed, but if you read the issues, it's pretty clear that he was. Arnie would later die from bone cancer in issue 443, which took place in 1995. Now, we hadn't really seen anything of Arnie since then. Like, he might have had like a flashback appearance or something since then. But he recently was mentioned again in the new released Captain America number 750. This issue was mostly about Steve reflecting on their friendship and whatnot. But in it, he says that Arnie died 7 years ago today. Since he and Steve were about the same age, that means that Arnie would have had to be about 93 at the least when he died, which means, the whole dying of bone cancer thing probably wasn't as necessary now as it was when he died in 1995. However, it's interesting because we're really getting at the limits of when Arnie could have been a presence in post freezing Steve's life. 90 to 100 range for Arnie dying is him being really old but still believable. But in another 10 years, 15 years, that kind of thing is going to not be feasible. Which is a bummer because I really like Arnie as a character and would love to see more of him. But that dynamic between him and Steve post the freezing just isn't going to really be possible. So I'm sure you could do it with comic book logic, but